We've heard news of first day blues, children having trouble with going back to school now that they have a mix of face-to-face and online. They also have to adjust to a new grade level and deal with new teachers and classmates. Does your child have a hard time adjusting to their new school? Is the transition from your home to the school always a struggle for you and your child? And are you scared that challenging behaviors might appear when they get stressed and frustrated from adapting to that new routine? Regardless of age, location, or disability, it's common for kids to have first day jitters. So watch this video on how we can make that transition smooth and seamless. In this video, we'll talk about how to help kids transition from home to school. Change is hard, and it's a lot harder for our kids. Whether you shift from one activity to the next, move between classrooms, or meet a new person, transitions are very difficult but crucial periods in our child's development. Transitions involve a lot of change, which means a lot of adjustments from our kids. They need to adapt to the new context by learning new routines and behaviors to match the new situations, regulate new sensations from the new environment, and develop strategies to communicate their needs to new people. This gets even more challenging in children who are described as rigid or have difficulties with flexibility to routine changes. This is common in children with autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, PTSD, and other conditions because these transitions cause challenging behaviors. Here are 8 tips that I love to use to avoid tantrums and meltdowns in your kids during transitions. Tip number 1 is to give your child enough time to prepare for the transition. If your child is expected to leave home at a very specific time every day, you don't want to give them just a few minutes before he's expected to transition. Their brains would respond better if it's given enough room to adapt and prepare for the change that's about to come. During a transition, as we've said, there's going to be a lot of changes that they need to adapt to. So we want to give their brain some room and allowance for it to prepare for the transition. So we want to give a reminder 30 minutes before the transition, and then another reminder 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 4, 3, 2, 1 minute before the transition happens. In this way, it's not all too sudden and rushed for your child. Even if the reminders are a little far off from the transition period, this room allows their brain to visualize about what's going to happen, expect the changes that are about to come in terms of the sensations, the sensory input, the responses that they're going to give, and so it also allows them to prepare the behaviors and the responses that they're going to give off once the transition actually happens. So in this case, since it's not rushed, there's going to be less stress on you and also less stress on your child to make the transition smoother. For some kids, they might even need more time to adapt. So that would mean not just minutes before the transition, but days before their first day of class will happen. Tip number 2 is to use a visual schedule. Instead of just giving verbal reminders, you want to use pictures and visual cues to help your child be guided during the transition. Pictures depicting the sequence of events that will happen during the transition can help set expectations with your child on how they're expected to behave and respond during that period. This will also help prime their behaviors or prepare how they will respond better and allow them opportunities for practice before it even happens. With this, it would become less of a struggle, but it would appear that the pictures are there not to command your child, but to facilitate their transition as it happens. With that, it wouldn't be forced and would even be a chance for you to cooperate with each other. Tip number 3 is to use transition activities. All of us might have had rituals or activities that we did before we went to school. For some, it was riding their car that brought them to school that signaled the start of a school day. For others, it could be the flag ceremony or a prayer that would help them get into the mood and letting them know that class is already about to begin. For me, it was carrying my brother's bags to school and walking together as we move from the house to the school. You can also set these transition activities and make them some sort of ritual for you and your child that would only be unique and specific for days when they need to go to school. It could be a sensory activity where you could have an exercise, a morning stretch, or something like an obstacle course that they can do before they leave home. It can also be a song that you can sing before they leave school, or a song you can play in the car while you're on the way. It functions the same way as our Papam Hello song that we use when we start our sessions with our kids. It lets them know and gives a very concrete start for your sessions, and this time you'd use the same strategy for school. It could even be packing their bags, which they could do at night, and then you could have some final activities in the morning, such as packing their lunchbox, or it could be closing the zipper. Tip number 4 is using a transition object. We know that some kids take comfort in something that's predictable and familiar for them. So in this way, you could let your kid bring a very familiar comfort object that they could use while they're going to school. It could be a stuffed toy, their favorite blanket, or even a fidget toy that they could bring from home to school and which might be useful in their first few weeks of class. Some might ask, isn't that dysfunctional already that they're depending on an object or a toy for them to relax? Well, for this one, it could be temporary and our child might grow out of it once they spend more weeks in school. For now, they could use it as a temporary alternative way of self-regulation while they're still developing skills on calming themselves and adapting into going to school as they enter this new routine. The transition object would just be there to facilitate the change and help the transition process easier, and later on, you can just fade it out. As long as it's not disrupting other kids or disrupting our child in participating in school activities, then it's something that they could use in helping them cope better. Tip number 5 is to use external transition signals. What that means is that the instructions to go to school and to transition would not come from you, but rather another signal that's very specific to that activity. So what that means is that instead of you having to tell your kid to pack their bags, wear your shoes, get ready for school, it would come from something else. What works well with a lot of kids would be transition blocks. So you have a stack of blocks with a number of minutes left for them before they transition. So you have a block for 30 minutes, and once they go down to 20, they're going to take out that block and have another block that says 20 minutes, and then 10 minutes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 minute. Similar to our tip number 1, but this time they have something that they could take concretely and something that's an actual object to represent time. For a lot of kids, this is very useful if they're not aware yet of the concept of time. So knowing that it's something abstract, we translate it into something that they could see, feel, and touch. And what's another way to know about time than clocks and timers? You could have an analog clock and use a marker to draw on the clock so that it would be used as a signal for your child. Once the long hand of the clock would touch that mark, it would mean that they have to tie their shoelaces, pack their bags, and get ready to leave for school. The signal would then not come from you, but from the clock, and something that's expected, something that they would look at before they get ready for school. Another one is a digital timer, and you can show a countdown of the time that would run out before they have to leave for school. So once they have this number concept and understand time running out, you can set a specific song or an alarm sound that would help them get ready. Tip number 6 is to use social stories. And out of all the tips, this is my favorite. A lot of anxiety coming from kids would result from them not knowing what to do when they're already in school. So instead of having them learn on their own as they get to school, you could prepare them with sample problem situations by using cards and exploring solutions on how they could act, how they could communicate, and solve problems when they're already there. So this would decrease your child's anxiety and how nervous they get because they already have an action plan for unexpected events that might happen in school. You could teach them how to react when a new friend approaches, how they could start up a conversation, how they could ask the teacher to go to the bathroom, ask for help when they're lost, or where they would wait to get picked up once they're already done with school. A very useful tip I give to the parents I work with and works really well with a lot of kids is to take actual pictures of the actual school bus, and even the actual teacher who they're going to meet. With this one, it would be a lot easier for kids to prepare for the school, to plan out where to go, what classroom they're going to enter, where they're going to sit down, and how they're going to behave once they're already there, because we've given them a lot of time to visualize and also prepare for what's going to happen. Giving them these photos, knowing that they're expected to adapt to a lot of new changes coming from a new place, the pictures would help them make the school feel more familiar, something that's more predictable, and even if they're going to encounter new sounds and new sensations when they're in the actual place, at least it's not entirely all new. Another thing you could use is a story, The Kissing Hand by Audrey Penn. This shows the adventure of Chester Raccoon and Mrs. Raccoon as they use the kissing hand as their secret to help Chester go into school. Reading stories like The Kissing Hand would give them an outside perspective of what happens with somebody who's having trouble with their first day jitters. Let them see that there's a solution to the problem they're going through, and also even make it a bonding moment with their parents. Tip number 7 is to be consistent with your routine. Learning a new routine means you have to unlearn old behaviors and relearn new behaviors, so it might take time for our kids to adapt. Problem behaviors may come up, and even old self-regulatory strategies might resurface as they enter this new situation. But you just give it time and be more consistent with your routine, and those problem behaviors may begin to disappear. The more that you make the routine predictable and familiar for them, like you could have the same routine at the same start of day, you could have the same signals, and also have the same sequence of events, that would make it easier for your kids to adapt and would make the transition a lot easier. Tip number 8, our last tip for this video, is to appreciate and be present in the struggle. Be present and just appreciate what's happening with you and your child, and know that even for kids without disabilities, these struggles with transitions happen. Allow your child to practice different strategies and just be there and observe how they adapt to new situations. These transitions may be a challenge, but they're also opportunities for our kids to practice self-regulation strategies. This will be useful not just for transitions later on, but also difficult times that they will face once they're already in school and already dealing with new challenges, new people, and new expectations from the new situations that they go through. So just hang on, try out different strategies, and before you know it, your child's already done with the school year. These are our 8 tips that help your kids transition from home to school. Comment below which tips work well with your child. When you use these strategies, transitions stop becoming a struggle and become opportunities for your child to develop new and higher level skills and abilities. So I'm excited to see you use them and achieve success in school, at home, and in the community. 3, 2, 1, grow!